Schiano's in the midst of an absolute mess after Tennessee agreed to hire him as their new coach. Then they retracted the offer due to public protest. To dissect this whole situation, we have an expert. It's former loudmouth, Rutgers play caller, and it's you, the new co-host of the Afternoon Drive with Carlin, Maggie, and Bart on WFAN. Chris Carlin, welcome back to Loudmouth.
It's great to be here. It's great to be here. As you can see, I like to dress up these days.
Thanks for classing it up for us.
Very casual today.
This is about as good as it is going to get.
This is it right now?
Yeah, I haven't worn a suit since I left. It's been fantastic.
I thought you'd show up in pajamas today.
Hey, we were close. We were close.
Well, we're happy to have you back to talk about a very serious subject, which is what's going on with Greg Schiano. And I know Tennessee released a statement talking about how wonderful of a guy Schiano is, but everything but why they didn't hire him. Now we've got different things coming out here and there. But Chris, is this a situation where a guy is presumed guilty before being innocent, and social media and the public outcry basically did the guy in?
It's ludicrous. I haven't seen anything like this. It's absolutely insane that this happened. And you think about it, this is somebody that's been very, very honest about this whole situation at the beginning, completely denied any kind of involvement at all, and now we're going off of third-person hearsay in what was a wrongful termination lawsuit 2 years ago. So we're going to impugn a guy's entire career off of what one guy said. Meanwhile, it was never in the Louis Freeh report. His name was never mentioned anywhere else. Penn State came out today and said he was never part of it. You had Tennessee come out today and say he wasn't part of it. Tennessee, to me, is gutless in what they did here, because you had people going nuts that I think, frankly, Tennessee fans were using this as an excuse because they didn't like the hire and they didn't get John Gruden.
Well, they don't think he's a good coach.
That's the problem.
I mean, honestly, that's where it begins, and then they dig a little bit deeper and go to Penn State. Listen, nobody knows exactly what transpired on that Penn State campus. I mean, and even
no, absolutely
I mean, honestly, no one would ever admit it anyway. So here's what it comes down to: what McQueary heard from Tom Bradley. Bradley obviously vindicated Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano was told, well, not Greg Schiano was told, but Bradley basically told McQueary that Schiano had saw something out of Penn State. Put that neither here nor there. Tennessee doesn't think Greg Schiano is that good of a coach. They just had Butch Jones there for 5 or 6 years. Butch Jones owned Schiano when he was coaching Cincinnati. They don't look at him being an SEC caliber coach. So that is really where it begins, and that's where the public outcry started. And then you get into the Sandusky, Penn State, and then it starts to go out of control.
But I think a lot of those fans turned to that and started to use that as their excuse. I think that's exactly what happened. Now, you're right. None of us were there. None of us know exactly what was said and what he saw. Only one person knows that, and that's him. I can only go off of what I know from the guy, and what I know from 15 years, he's always been a guy of incredibly high integrity, especially when it comes to that kind of thing. He's got 4 kids. I would be shocked if he knew about it. I would honestly be shocked if he had seen that and not done something.
Well, but that whole Penn State scandal is shocking. People knew and did
absolutely.
Nothing. Yeah. And he would never, I mean, honestly, I don't know. Listen, my time at Rutgers with Schiano, when he was there, he was always, utmost character, gave you his time, was a guy that held people accountable. I'm not telling you that he's innocent or guilty. I have no idea what transpired on that campus, but I do know this. If he did see something, I know this. He would never admit that he saw something now, because basically his career would be over.
Well, I think that, but here's my problem with it, okay? You think Urban Meyer and Ohio State didn't do the vetting on this last year? I mean, Ohio State has every resource at their hands, and I'm sure that they dug in and found out that they had absolutely nothing there. There was no basis in fact for this whatsoever. This was what a guy said, somebody else said. Right. And it was in a wrongful termination lawsuit. So look, all of that aside, okay, none of us know what happened there. To me, the biggest problem here is Tennessee kowtowed to their fan base who didn't like the hire from a football perspective, and they went nuts. Now, you can argue that all you want. I don't have a problem with that. I hate the fact that this guy's entire career has now been impugned based on the words of one guy and what he said somebody else said.
But if you coached at Penn State during that time period, you're immediately lumped in with the whole Sandusky scandal. And as you said, only one person, Greg Schiano, really knows what he saw or didn't see.
Absolutely true.
But now Tennessee, they have a problem because, one, obviously Schiano's not going there, but two, what coach is now going to step into that university and take over that school?
I totally agree with that. You know, John Curry, the athletic director, he was good enough to hire before this. He had said we did all of our vetting. We went through everything. Everything was clear. But now because our fans don't like him, we're not going to hire him. To me, that's gutless. To me, that's completely gutless on his part. And if I were a head coach, knowing that the fan base has that kind of power, before a guy's even hired, it's one thing if you're screaming and yelling about how he's handling himself on the job. Before a guy's even hired, why would I want to go there? Unless I'm going to get overpaid.
Listen, I'll ask you this, though, Chris. Shouldn't he have looked at it and gotten a feel and a vibe of what the fan base and what the volunteer community would have thought about Schiano before he decided to bring Schiano aboard and name him as head coach? Don't you, as athletic director, aside from the vetting process and doing all that kind of research, have an idea, is this the right guy for this program to get this excited? Because the Volunteers are coming off one of the worst years in their program's history.
They are.
That's dangerous, though, Moose, because if you do go by only what your fan base wants, then you end up sort of, maybe you're making the decision for the wrong reasons. You should take it into consideration, but it shouldn't be the determining factor. If you believe this is your coach and this is the guy who's going to straighten out your program, then the fans will come aboard eventually.
For me, ultimately, if you're in that job, if you're listening too much to what the fans are saying, you're going to end up sitting with them.
And now Schiano, does he become a head coach ever again?
For his sake, I hope so. I do think he's a good program builder.
Yeah.
You can't look at him and say he's an unbelievable head coach, but I think he's a very good college head coach, and I think he would do very well at Tennessee or any other place that
He'll
he gets
get
an
another
opportunity.
job,
I hope so for his sake, but I got to be honest, I'm not convinced right now.